I think the opening credits of Mandy, a romantic revenge piece from Panos Cosmatos, immediately places the viewer in some seat of omniscience. It's a simple overhead shot of this turquoise forest, but starting a movie out with a brief glimpse of sovereignty could be the first of several nods to other themes embedded in the movie, such as spirituality, God, biblical storytelling. Mandy, without question, takes an incredibly careful and patient approach in telling its story. In a way, it seems to reject the real world's frenetic pacing and rate at which certain events occur. Events ranging from general conversation, kidnapping, manipulation, business. Rather than piling on moments and silences that drone on pointlessly, to me it seems to have the opposite effect, where the movie actually took out the filler of constant noise and sounds and dialogue that operates like the back and forth on a pinball machine. They took the in-between moments and zeroed in on what we don't see in movies today, the purest, most overlooked, and untouched elements of humanity in our world. I agree the movie is bright and stylish in presentation and lighting, but it seems to perfectly contrast the nature of how this story gracefully carries itself, almost guided by this stripped-down simplicity. Even in climactic scenes towards the end with chainsaws, for example, at first I couldn't help but feel bothered by how methodical each scene played out, like everyone knew what would happen. But that would correlate with a greater plan or purpose for these characters, which led me to look back for other instances of a god or even a biblical story manifesting itself in this universe. The first 20 minutes capture you in this hypnotic aura of their love for each other. The swelling, ethereal score by the late Jóhann Jóhannsson seems to cushion each scene, watching these characters occupy the in-between space where purity resides. Their home appears tucked away from civilization, a private paradise where they trade ideas and stories and allow love to grow and nurture. This was the first moment I started to view these two as Adam and Eve figures, soaked in their surroundings, living from moment to moment of euphoric bliss before, of course, evil has to run rampant. I think the villains in this movie that represent evil present themselves as the truest or purest form of evil and how the nature of evil operates, which kind of bypasses the whole seduction phase. Where in the Bible, Adam and Eve are tempted to turn themselves over, the villains in Mandy just cause destruction. The horrible realities of this world that are out of our control, like disease and old age, don't tease us with symptoms that look nice and friendly on the surface to entice us. They just bite and sink their teeth further and further without any ulterior motive. And on a larger scale, the character Nicolas Cage plays could represent a godlike figure, which transitions this updated story. He's forced to watch mankind viciously murder his wife, who shares some correspondence to Mother Earth, as the poster depicts her suspended in sunlight, and the end credits show the eponymous title made out of earthly roots. During this horrific scene, Nick Cage is tied up with barbed wire, which made me think to Jesus' crown of thorns, and later on Nick Cage is captured and even has a nail driven through one of his hands to keep him from escaping. Not to mention the villain's final words to Nick Cage alluding to Jesus and how he never offered a sacrifice. And of course at the end his journey is mentioned as his salvation, as he professes to become a god. The people that were out to create chaos are said to have taken enhanced LSD and never been right since, which made me think of religious extremists that act on these predatory highs from their faith. I mentioned earlier how these events could be predetermined, and one line that caught my attention was Mandy at the beginning drawing what she calls a jungle temple. Nick Cage is seen wearing a shirt with a jungle tiger on it, and his journey ends in this Jesus-like temple, shortly after a literal tiger is let out of his cage. Their conversation about planets doesn't necessarily tell us where they are in time and space, but a dream sequence of Mandy floating in the stars briefly shows Jupiter in the background, and one of the last shots of the movie pans up to reveal these unearthly, jagged rocks and what looks like Jupiter practically encompassing Earth. This movie works so well for me because it knows and embraces its absurdity, but can still be delved into for other meanings. I don't consider this the allegorical film to end all films, but just on a first viewing I felt excited to analyze Nick Cage drunkenly do his thing in a bathroom shot that reminded me so much of The Shining with its brightness and wallpaper and precise timing of zoom humans. There's captivating moments everywhere in this movie, like Mandy's face melding with the villains right after she's captured, a really brief but chilling scene with Nick Cage watching Mandy across a fire. Pretty much every moment with Nick Cage. The overall use of lighting and framing that becomes visually arresting in its staticness, combined with the resounding music, create these incomparably full moments. It did have some bizarre edits, especially while she's walking down this road and the van passes her, and the intensity of some filters felt a bit overkill. But these small issues don't really take away from how this movie comments on the overused revenge formula. It's presented in a cutting-edge, unique way that I've never seen before, and yet it's a pretty simple story to tell, just fascinating to describe.